buyer walked into my guest's listing and told her ChatGPT already ran the numbers and a fair offer was $800,000. The house was listed for $1.8 million. The reason AI was off by $1 million is the entire episode. Stay tuned. This episode of Keeping It Real is brought to you by Real Geeks. How many homes are you going to sell this year? Do you have the right tools? Is your website turning soft leads into interested buyers? Are you spending money on leads that aren't converting? Well, Real Geeks is your solution. Find out why agents across the country choose Real Geeks as their technology partner. Real Geeks was created by an agent for agents. They pride themselves on delivering a sales and marketing solution so that you can easily generate more business. Their agent websites are fast and built for lead conversion with a smooth search experience for your visitors. Real Geeks also includes an easy-to-use agent CRM. So once a lead signs up on your website, you can track their interest and have great follow-up conversations. Real Geeks is loaded with a ton of marketing tools to nurture your leads and increase brand awareness. Visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod and find out why realtors come to Real Geeks to generate more business. Again, visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod. And now, onto our show. Today's episode is brought to you by Corded.io. Are you looking for agents to join your brokerage or team? Now, as a real estate recruiter, I can tell you the answer is always yes. But most agents aren't looking to move right now. So how do you know who to contact? Well, what if I were to tell you there's a recruiting and retention tool powered by artificial intelligence that shows you exactly which agents in your local market are looking to leave their brokerage right now and which agents at your own firm are also looking to leave you? Now, I've been recruiting realtors for 15 years and I've hired over 2,000 agents. I can tell you with no exaggeration, this is the tool I've been waiting for. Corded's AI looks for trends across dozens of variables for each agent in your market and shows you which agents they believe are likely to move. Not only does it do that, but Corded's AI went and visited my recruiting website and read everything I offer. So now when I'm recruiting, Corded's AI tells me exactly what to say based on that agent's needs and what my brokerage can offer. It even writes emails for me. I've never seen anything like it, and I use it every single day. Now, if you are looking to grow your brokerage, Corded.io is the best tool out there. Visit Corded.io to schedule a demo. Again, that's Corded.io. And now, onto the show. All right, hello and welcome to Keeping It Real, the largest podcast made by real estate agents and for real estate agents. My name is DJ Paris. I am your guide and host through the show. And today, this is going to be a really amazing episode. I have with us Kelsey Caputo, who not only is a young realtor, but with a bunch of experience. She is doing some really incredible things at such a young age. She just recently was named one of the 30 under 30 by the National Association of Realtors, which literally like thousands of people apply for every year and they only get 30. And she was one of them. And so we are going to find out exactly how she's building her business. She is in the top 2% nationwide for Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. So incredible. Let's tell you a little bit more about Kelsey. So she's a fourth generation Florida Keys resident, and she brings a lifetime of local knowledge. And we're going to talk about how important local knowledge is. And also she has this passion for helping people buy, sell, build, also invest in a super unique and challenging and incredibly competitive market. So she's in the Keys, as we mentioned. She earned her bachelor's in architecture from Architecture and the Arts from Florida International, and holds licenses as obviously an agent. Also GC, she's a contractor. She gives, which is amazing because she can give her clients insight that extends beyond just traditional real estate transaction, right? Her background in architecture, construction, design, and property valuation allows her to help clients make informed decisions with confidence, whether they're purchasing a waterfront estate, building custom home, or investing in the Keys. So she believes real estate is more about closing deals. It's about serving as a trusted resource and helping people create the lifestyle and legacy they envision. Kelsey, welcome to Keeping It Real.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. We're excited. Before we get into talking about you, I know we want to talk a lot about AI because, of course, agents are always curious, where's AI going? What is it doing? What is it doing that can help me in my business? And maybe what is it doing that's threatening to a realtor's business? And
Yeah.
I'm a big believer, and I know you are as well, that AI is not going to replace realtors. Well, let's put it maybe a different way. Not going to replace good realtors. Maybe it's going to replace the not as skilled agent, but we're going to talk about why you're not going to be replaceable. But let's first just tell us about the keys. For those of us not familiar, tell us about the kind of clientele that you typically work with and sort of where they come from.
Okay, yeah. So the Keys is definitely a very niche market. I would say it's mostly luxury. So it's an island that's 100 miles long from Key Largo to Key West. But we really deal with second homeowners or third, fourth homes. Really, there's 70% second homeowners here. So it's quiet when it's quiet. And then when people are in town, it's busy and it's fun and beautiful. But we're not dealing with the everyday first time home buyer or um, primary homeowners. We do get them, obviously, but really the clientele is that from other places in Florida, New York City, New Jersey, California that are spending their seasons here, 6 months out of the year here, or just winter.
Yeah. And as a result, I think sometimes people have agents who aren't working luxury markets or aren't doing a lot of luxury transactions, maybe have a lot of times made the wrong ideas because in the non-luxury world, getting listings is everything. And of course, getting listings, you oftentimes don't have to go out and source the buyer. That's the other agent's job. But a lot of times in luxury, getting a listing, I mean, it's great. It's awesome. It's amazing.
Right.
But is it common that you as the listing agent still need to kind of find the buyer?
Yeah, so I didn't know that was a thing, like buyer's agents and seller's agents, because here we do both. So, obviously list to last, you want to get as many listings as possible, but you are also having to go source the buyers, because they're not
There's not as
here.
many of them.
We're sourcing them from other states and other
Right.
places, trying to get them here, or they're here on vacation and decide like I could see myself living here for 3 months out of the year.
Yeah, I absolutely it makes perfect sense. So you have to go out to other markets and really try to have an impact. We'll maybe ask about your social media videos that you're going to interested in starting to do, where you talk about lifestyle, but also sort of targeting some of those other feeder markets, but also building relationships with agents in those markets, kind of in the same space as you, is probably so critical. And for those of you that are listening right now that maybe are from some of those markets that Kelsey mentioned, or I'm here in Chicago, we have a lot of people who, do the 6 months down in Florida thing
Yep.
too. And, think about, well, maybe this is a great person to build a relationship with and you guys can feed each other. But let's talk about, I want to now get into AI because I talk to a lot of agents in the non-luxury space about their impressions of AI, but I don't get to talk to a lot of luxury agents about it. So you're super passionate about this. You've told me AI is one of the best things that's ever happened to real estate, and I agree with you. But it's really the opposite of what a lot of other people think, especially agents. So let's make the case. Why are you rooting for the thing that everyone else is scared of?
Because AI isn't replacing realtors, it's replacing what's expected from a realtor. So if we use it as a tool, it's only helping us. I mean, AI can only go so far. And like I said, in a niche market where every property is different. And I mentioned this before we got on, you'll have a $3.5 million waterfront home, but next to it is a mobile home that's been there since the 40s. Somebody's waiting for that to get torn down. So, AI doesn't know that. AI is just taking comparables of one street, but they're not comparable. So I think there's a huge missing piece in AI that I'm sure they'll figure out eventually, but at the moment right now, they don't know it. So it's still going to rely on the local knowledge here. And then I take AI and make that better. But the biggest thing for me is I use AI. I already know questions that the buyer is going to ask. I already know their objections to the neighborhood, the street, everything before they even show up. So I'm already coming with all of the questions that they're going to have before we even get there. So to me, it's a tool because now they're like, how'd you know I was going to ask that?
Yeah. And before you had to sort of guess, and now you have this amazing amount of intelligence that we can tap into that will literally tell us the objections, the questions. What do people who buy these types of homes think? And it's really incredible. But I want to talk about specifically the example you just mentioned about you know AI not always understanding, well, next door there's this thing that maybe isn't as advantageous to the the listing that we're mentioning, and so it doesn't factor this information. And so a buyer walks in, this example you were telling me, that has already asked ChatGPT what a fair offer value is on a key waterfront home, but how wrong was the number, and what was it that AI didn't know?
The numbers are always super off, and you never want to argue with a buyer. But what I try to tell buyers is there's so much that AI doesn't know yet. So they came in and they were like, oh, well, I just want to let you know that I asked my chat GPT before we got here, what a great offer would be. And it told me $800,000. Well, this property is listed at 1.8. I'm sure they do have negotiating room.
Probably not that
but
much.
Not that much.
Yeah.
But AI doesn't know anything about the boating access or what kind of boat you can have there. It doesn't know Bayside versus Ocean. That stuff it should know, but it doesn't know a lot of the nitty gritty details: seawall, dock, code violations, zoning. This particular property, you could actually do 7-day rentals. That's much more valuable in that specific location than if it were a 30-day rental. There might not be a market then, depending on what they were trying to do with it. And this particular client was looking for a weekly rental. So, AI doesn't know a lot of the details that would make or break a decision, because since we do have so many second homeowners, a lot of people do want to cash flow their properties when they're not here.
Sure. And you just brought up a really great point, because if I'm in the ultra high net worth category and I'm buying my second, third, fourth home, one of those being in the Keys, I would want to know if my next door neighbor's renting out his, comparable home to mine every 3 days with Airbnb, right? Like, I would want to know that. AI probably doesn't know that, but you would know that. You would know, like, okay, just so you know, there's partying that goes on at this place because people come down and rent this out, 9 months out of the year. This is where you can really add a ton of value, because obviously AI probably wouldn't know how to figure that out.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I tell everyone. AI doesn't know your market, it knows market data. So it knows what agents or third-party sites publish online that they want you to know. And as we all know, you can make data look good or bad depending on what you're trying to get it to show. But AI is very limited on the information it has. AI is still learning. So the more you talk to it, it's learning. But just right off the bat, if I've never spoken about real estate and I ask my AI about real estate, it's going to agree with me unless you've trained your AI, which you and I were also just talking about, how you have to kind of train your AI. So there's a huge difference between having the information available and learning the information with you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Now, you are also a licensed general contractor, and I don't want to gloss over this, because I think this is an incredible advantage that you have over other agents. So when you walk into a redevelopment, a tear down, really any property, what do you look for when you're, doing a evaluation in your own head about the property that you can then bring to the buyer or the seller?
So my mind automatically goes to opportunity. I have I can walk in a house and I can redesign the house in 2 minutes. A lot of people can't. They don't have the vision. They need to see it on paper. But my husband actually does marine construction, seawalls, pilings, and everything. So I feel like over the last couple of years, I've gotten more into like concrete, which construction. But I walk in and I notice all the spalling. I notice what's underneath the dock automatically. And, I didn't go to school specifically for that, but just because my husband does it and he's kind of always talking about it, I'm like, that kind of is more valuable than a lot of things that I look at design wise. But I can tell you automatically if the construction's good. I automatically go roof, windows, main things that are going to cost the most money. So then we kind of dissect the house, outside in, rather than looking at the kitchen, because that's one of the cheaper things you're going to redo in a house.
Right. And knowing things like seawalls, pylons, like really understanding, which it's amazing your husband, is able to help with that information too. And you obviously know it, is so critical, because I know people who have bought waterfront homes and, all of a sudden they have to completely repair the seawall or or all of it, all of a sudden it's now a $200,000 fix for something they just didn't know. And you're able to go in and say, this is a problem, or this is going to be a problem in the next 5 years. And
Yeah.
this is where you earn your money doing, I mean, being that person, you are literally saving people from making decisions that they just can't see because it's under the surface.
Well, and that's
Um,
going back to where, AI said this house may be worth 800,000, but it has the pictures from the MLS and realtor.com and all those places, and the seawall looks great.
right.
But,
Yeah.
I go on and I see that they just capped it. So you have no idea what's underneath. Yes, it looks pretty, but it was just patched. It wasn't replaced. So, that's kind of where the data will tell you this house is worth 800,000, but then I'm going to look and say, okay, well, those homes sold for the same price, but they didn't have a good seawall. There was spalling that needs to be replaced. The roof is at the end of its life. Those things AI can't put together. And that's a big thing that I'm trying to tell buyers is, as much information as there is online, it is good. It helps educate buyers. Consumers are definitely more educated than I've been working with in the last 5 years, but it still has a long way to come.
Yeah. And also, too, the nice part about not just understanding what's ahead as maybe an engineer's mind would be able to do, which most realtors don't have that skill set. You also can tell, you know things about permitting, you know things about FEMA and their 50% rule, and all of these things that are like really important, not just like you need to fix this, but how hard it is to get permitted or how easy, how much
Mhm.
it might cost. Like that's an incredibly valuable skill set.
Yes, and yeah, I think permits are a huge thing down here because we're actually going into a building moratorium, which I tell buyers, and they're like, oh my God, we can't buy, it's dangerous. And I'm like, no, you can still build. It's just you have to either buy a permit or you have to tear down a house and rebuild from an existing house, which to us, I think is beneficial because it is getting rid of a lot of the mobile homes. But to somebody who's not into the building world, it seems very scary to them. So again, I think local knowledge is going to become more important in the age of AI. And I'm not saying that AI is bad. I use AI every day. I love it. I think there's a huge benefit to it. And I think it does help consumers where they kind of already know the neighborhood they want to buy in before they even talk to me because they've looked up the areas. But I do think having a real relationship is still very beneficial to buyers and sellers.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I know you've also said you'd rather tell a client, I don't know, I'll find out, than fake it, which I could not. I wish I could, I'd blow everyone's eardrums out with the applause I'd like to give you, because I absolutely believe that is the only way to be. But in a luxury market, clients kind of expect you to know everything, and it's a risk to say that. So tell me about how well that's worked for you to say like, you know what, I don't know the answer, I will get back to you. Has it
So
ever been
I
a problem?
started real estate when I was 18, and everyone's like, "You just kind of have to fake it and fake it until
Right.
you make it.
Right.
You'll figure it out, and then as soon as you have sales, people are going to trust you." Well, when you're 18, that sounds great. Like, oh, I'm just gonna like pretend like I know everything. But then you start working with high end buyers and sellers, and especially in a luxury market, these are wealthy individuals. They're very intelligent. They knew more than me. I mean, it was very intimidating at first, and I thought like, oh, if I just fake it till I make it, those people can see right through you. So I did it one time. I said something that like I wasn't 100% sure, and I just felt like they were like, staring at me like this girl has no idea what she's doing. So now I'd rather tell you I don't know and I'll find out. But it's such a small town and I have contacts with everyone in the construction industry. Like it's so much easier for me to go, hey, I don't know. Let me connect you with this person. And then automatically like, oh my gosh, I'm going to meet so many people through her. And I've actually gotten so many more clients just connecting subcontractors, contractors together. And then they feel like I have like a Rolodex of people for them. Now they're wanting to be my friend or work with me because when they leave, I can still help them, find a plumber if they need somebody to go over to their house. I can recommend a landscaper when they're gone. So now, not saying I'm a property manager because I'm not, but I can help them with all of these things when they're not in town because most of my clients don't live here.
There's also something incredibly psychologically satisfying that most people are afraid of, but the truth is it actually is endearing when you are consulting with somebody, or rather you have, let's just say a doctor you're going to see or any sort of service professional. You ask them a complicated question and they go, you know what, let me get back to, I want to like look into that and I want to get back to you. There's something very flattering to the person who's hearing that, which maybe sounds counterintuitive because you're like, this person's going to go do work for me and learn something and then come back to me with an answer. This is what consultants do, right? They go into a business that's needing help and the consultant just listens and figures out, okay, here are the problems. Okay, let me come back to you in a few weeks when I figure out some solutions. And I mean, that's a whole industry of consultation. So that's what you're doing. And it's incredibly flattering because it's like, I care enough about you that I'm going to go do my own homework and come back to you and give you a much better answer than I can give you now. And I can't imagine anyone ever says anything other than, fine, great. Like, I can't imagine that ever hurts you at all.
And I mean, knowing the information is only going to help me in the future. So I'd rather get the right information, connect them with who they need to be connected with, because not only is it helping me, it's going to help them. And then they trust you. And again, real estate is built on trust. You don't have a business without trust, especially in a world where AI is growing. You have to give a reason for somebody to trust you and want to work with you. And that's where it comes back to being relationship based.
So some of the biggest listings you've had, this is what I just think is wild and amazing. These are people some of them I've never met in person, right? So we have some, where this business is really so much belly to belly, eyeball to eyeball, which I guess you can still do to some, well, not belly to belly, but you can do eyeball to eyeball through FaceTime. But how do you win the trust over with these multi-million-dollar sellers or buyers over the phone and on the screen?
Transparency. Truthfully, it's transparency. It's taking the time to answer their questions, going through the entire process, being personable. I have to say, it's just taking the time to build the relationship. Yeah, my biggest listings, I've never met the seller.
Isn't that amazing?
It's so crazy. And we talk on the phone and we don't have a face to each other's name.
Yeah. And obviously not needed if you're providing the experience they want. And so I love that. Now you represent buyers and sellers and you have your own design and build business, tight lines, interiors. Now that's either the ultimate full service model or a conflict of interest. I don't think it's a conflict of interest, but how do you handle that line? Sort of, do you ever tell a client to hire someone other than you? I'm sure.
For design?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I don't have the time, I'll tell them to, and I recommend other designers in the area.
Sure.
I really only do a few projects a year because
you're pretty busy. Yeah.
I'm pretty busy. I love design though. So a lot of times if I sell them the house or if they want to renovate before they go to market, then I'll help them, because then we're also sitting there working at it like, okay, so here's the buyer that's going to be for this house. We're approaching it at a different angle. Like, you're going to sell. So let's attract that buyer. Let's make it the biggest entertaining house because that's the buyer that's going to look in this neighborhood. Or they buy it and, they want to put their own personal touch on it. So then I'll help them after. Yeah,
it makes sense. You've told me that you prep with AI before you ever walk into a buyer or listing appointment. And so what are some of the prompts you're throwing into AI that help you before you ever meet the client?
Oh my gosh, I use AI before any buyer consultation or seller. So if I'm going to meet a buyer and we're going to look at these 5 houses, I'll throw those 5 houses into AI and I'll say, we're looking at these. What are some of the objections that they're going to have to the neighbors or neighborhood? What are questions that they're going to ask? What do they all have in common? So I can see if I should be sending them something else that they're not thinking they're going to like. Because you can look at 5 houses and they all look the exact same, but we could be missing it. Maybe they're looking at those houses because they like the style, but it's actually not going to fit their boating needs or something like that. So the biggest thing is I already know their objections to all of these. And I don't do it. Let me rephrase that. I do it more because I know that they're saying, okay, if we go to this house, here's what I'm negotiating. But now I can tell them we can still negotiate on price. But instead of negotiating that, you're really trying to negotiate the construction or the boating access or something more tangible rather than style, because the seller is going to be like, well, that's my style.
Do you also, because a lot of the people that you represent are going to be public people, maybe they're, maybe they head corporations, maybe they're celebrities, maybe they're just people in the public eye because of, their wealth or what they've accomplished. Are you also able to do intelligence briefings on them so that you have a really good awareness of like what this person is like, or at least what their public persona is like. I imagine that's helpful as well.
Yes. Oh, yes. So I actually just took a listing in Key Largo, and this house is beautiful. It's super modern. And so basically, I put this house into AI and said, build me a buyer profile.
Oh,
So,
I love
it gave me that this house is perfect for a baseball player or
that.
a music producer. It kind of gives you the profile. They're going to come from, these states or whatever. And it could be wrong, it could be right. But anyway, so now I take this and now, we go find wealth offices that manage those types of people, or we go find brokers that work directly with that type of buyer. So now my outreach is specific. So I'm sending a whole package to these specific brokers, wealth management offices, um, and types of people. That way, when I go to my seller, I say, look, this is who we targeted this week. This is how many calls we got back. How many people said, yes, that's the style I'm looking for. And it's just a more targeted space now. I'm not just throwing it out on Instagram anymore, because now I know exactly who's going to be looking at this house.
That's a really brilliant thing. I've never heard anybody say. I've heard it said the other way, where it's like, okay, I have this client. I'm going to do all the research on the client that AI can find so that I have a better awareness of the client, which of course people should do too. But
Right.
you go a different way too, which is brilliant, which is, hey, who's the best kind of buyer, or who's most likely to buy this property? And especially in the ultra high net worth space, you do need to know, is this, a CEO of a really conservative,
Right.
type of company, or is it somebody who's more artistic, or just, so that is a really smart way. So I imagine, look, we can all do this with any of our listings. We could say, you know, who's this best suited for? And especially, you're really into lifestyle. I want to talk about that because you live in a lifestyle rich area where people are
Mhm.
spending a tremendous amount of money, whether they're there part-time, full-time, and they have the ability to pay for the lifestyle they want. And so you have to really understand what they want in a lifestyle. How important is that when you're communicating or interviewing some of these buyers or I guess it'd be buyers mostly, but for when people are looking to buy in, do you have that conversation of like, tell me what your typical evening looks like, or what do you do on the weekends, or what are your hobbies, just so that you can make sure you're putting them in a property that's going to at least be near the things that they enjoy?
Oh, 100%. Because especially being in this type of market, these are their second homes. So how you live in a second home versus a primary home is very different. So most of the time, these properties don't look anything like what they live in at home, because they come down here and they either want to be out on the water all day long, they're never going to be home, and then when they get there, they're sleeping. Or you get the people who they come on vacation, they bring as many family and friends as they can fit down here. So they really want it to be an entertaining central home. They want to be at the sandbar every weekend, So it's most important for me to know how they're going to use this house. If they cook a lot, if they are going to be here 1 week out of the year. And
Right.
surprisingly, we get a lot of people who buy and they're here for 1 month out of the year. So it's
Right.
just important to know, are they going on the bay? Are they going to be on the ocean, fishing, diving, snorkeling? Because that's a completely different styled house than those going fishing in the backcountry.
And if they're only going to be there 1 month out of the year, you have to nail that lifestyle thing, because they're only there a month and they are going to live that particular lifestyle. So that is so important. Back to AI. So what do you think that many agents, and maybe even agents in your area, who aren't as skilled with AI, like what do agents do wrong with AI? Like, what are some of the mistakes that you see other agents making?
I don't think people use AI to its fullest potential. I think a lot of people look at AI and, yeah, maybe they'll ask it a question or write an MLS description, and that's all great. I mean, I use it for Instagram captions as well sometimes, but I don't think that's the fullest potential of it. I think it does know a lot, and then once an agent adds its local component to it,
Yeah.
it is limitless. So if you're using it to find your objections, concerns, and questions that your buyers or sellers are going to ask, you're so much more prepared to meet these people, that you go in and you look like you did all the research in the world, whether it was on them or on the property, and you're already a step up. So it's more just integrating it into your everyday, but taking it a step further. And I think the biggest thing is letting AI, or you challenge AI, because sometimes it does just agree with you. And that's, again, not using it to its fullest potential. Because if I just agreed with everything that you said, what kind of conversation are we having?
Yeah, it'd be great for my ego. Wouldn't be good for the listeners. So yeah, let's not do that. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think too that one thing that agents don't think about is telling the story of the home. But in your case, that's really critical because these are expensive properties. There is a story there, whether it's the architect or just the way it was constructed or the way it's laid out or the features or whatever, the history. There's always a story. And I imagine you getting that story, you can get a lot of that from AI plus your local experience. How important is it to tell the story of the property to a buyer?
I would say it's very important, but more than the story, like I do follow a lot of agents that are out of town just because I do like to follow other people's marketing, and they'll walk into a house and they'll tell you, the family before ate dinner here and drank coffee here and painted in the backyard and did these things. I think that's great. How everyone lives in a house is great. It's going to be different from the next person. But I think people really want to know was the history of the property, like were the canals dredged, when's the seawall redone, the roof. They want to know more the history of the property rather than how they're going to live in it, because to be fair, it doesn't matter. Everyone's going to live in their house differently.
That's true. And like people want to imagine the way that they would live in the
Yeah.
house on their own. But you're right. They care very much about the bones and the history of that. And yeah, I mean, I imagine if the architects really got a great story, like obviously you mentioned that, but the point of you being a general contractor is you get to tell a different story, which is here's what's possible and here's what you need to know about what's currently happening, and not as much of like the last family did this or that, but here's what your family can do and here's
Right.
what you
And
need to
more the
know.
history of the property, has it been lived in? Was it a
Yeah.
vacation home? Was it rented? It's funny because my grandpa was down here long before he was doing marine construction back in the 80s. So he actually dug out a lot of the canal systems here. So I'll tell people, like, oh, my grandpa actually, this canal system was dredged out, and people are like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like, that's what's cool of this house, So it's funny what people do grasp onto.
Yeah, well, but just having the knowledge really is the cool part, and also the personal connection to the community. You've 4 generations there in the Keys, is a marketing asset for sure. You're not a fly by nighter. This is your entire life has been there, and that is an incredible value add versus somebody who moves there and has to learn it all. But I'm going to ask you a question that presupposes you are not a 4th-generation agent. And this is a question I like to ask all my guests. I think it's fascinating because I love asking this particular question because I know you would be successful if we dropped you anywhere. And so let's pretend that you woke up tomorrow, brand new market, no family history, no contacts, none of the 4th-generation knowledge that you have. How would you use AI to get local fluent, like fluent in the market, fast enough to be useful in, like, let's say 90 days? What would you do to really start to get that knowledge?
Let's see. If I woke up in the Florida Keys, well, I have two things to say to this, and one will be using AI, and you just try to figure out where people go and how they live when they come down, whether they're on vacation, like what are they doing, and then, since it is a relationship business, you have to go out.
Yes.
Like I used to be such a big homebody where like I'll cook dinner every night and eat at home. I'm fine with that. But the more I go out, the more you talk to people. Every time you talk to somebody, especially here, because they're from all over the world, they're so interesting, and you get to talking, and then, somewhere in the conversation, a house or you being an agent or them asking for a recommendation comes up, and they're a potential client. So the biggest thing is figuring out how people move through a town, where they go, and then going out.
Yeah, and that's on the getting the client side is getting out there,
Yes.
really immersing yourself in the community, being of service to the community, and just learning as much as you get. It's really the biggest mistake agents make. For example, we're by not doing that. So we have 77. I'm in the city of Chicago. We have 77 neighborhoods, and agents, there's no way you'll know all 77 markets. Obviously, that's insane.
Right.
And then there's God only knows how many suburbs outside of that, and probably more than really, probably more than 77. And so, yeah, of course, your client wants to live in this part, and maybe you're not particularly as skilled in that. You can get up to speed, at least to a degree, but they forget to plant their flag somewhere. As far as, yeah, I'll work other places because Chicago's big market, but I'm going to be the absolute specialist in X neighborhood. And they don't realize, like, if you become ultra valuable to people who want to live in that, or even already live in that neighborhood area, you can become that person over years by, knowing more about that area, doing content about that area.
Right.
Now, in your case, it's a little different because your clients a lot of times come from outside of the area. But
Right.
you were talking about like understanding lifestyle. I think that's where the agent is headed. I think we're going to start thinking about realtors as lifestyle consultants, or I don't know if that's an actual thing, but a
Right.
place to match somebody with their particular lifestyle. And good agents do that now. You're doing that now. I think that is going to separate the wheat from the chaff as we continue to, as AI just gets better at the data. I wanted to tell you one funny story, and then get final thoughts. So you were talking about how some properties, there's older properties that might maybe sit next to it that aren't as maybe upscale, maybe it's a mobile home or a manufactured home that's been there forever. And, the primary property looks amazing, but maybe next to this changes the value. And I have a friend who his parents bought a 20-acre avocado orchard out in Ojai in California. And there was a mobile home at the edge of the property, and the previous owners and the person lived on it. And it was like, the person sort of worked on the avocado farm, but was not deeded to the land in any way. And part of the deal, they did not know this until after they bought, was, oh, that person's staying and that mobile home is staying. And it ended up working out. But like, they didn't know that because their agent didn't mention, oh, by the way, so-and-so is, you're not going to be able to boot this person off. Like, you'd have to basically get the law involved. And do you really, like, this person's been here for 30 years. Do you really want to do that? And you want to, and they had to figure out how to integrate this person into their lifestyle, because their mobile home was only 100 feet away from this beautiful property. And it ended up working out perfectly, but like, they didn't know that because it wasn't disclosed. And so these are the kind of things that good agents can figure out and say, oh, by the way, so-and-so over there, he's not moving. When you got, like, if you want to try to kick him out, you can be the evil person to do that. But that's probably not going to happen. And the community has supported him living on this property for 30 years. So the reality of it is this is where great agents are like, by the way, over there, so-and-so, are you cool with that person living there right next to you? And they were like, that's fine. We don't care. And it worked out really well. And that person ended up almost becoming a family member to the family that my friend, it was really a sweet scenario, but it could go the other way too.
It could go the other way. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is what, okay. So back to the question of how would you start over? Number one, you would learn everything you can about that market. You would just immerse yourself in what's the lifestyle, what do people do while they're here, where do they come from, how do I make connections with some of these other markets, how do I reach some of these people who don't even know they want to buy a home in the Keys yet because they're not thinking about it. And so you have this really unique challenge, which is because these are people that can buy a lot of other places in a lot of other markets, right? So you have to sort of, attract them to the Keys, but that means you have to be an expert. So you're right. And then the second piece is getting out into the public and actually talking to people and seeing, what their needs are. And then how often has it been where you've just gone out socially? And again, these are high net worth buyers and sellers. I know you don't only exclusively work with that, but that's the bulk of your business. How often does that happen where you meet somebody and, you're able to make a connection and that they become a client, like just from a social event?
Every day. It's so crazy. Because you don't know who anyone is. And, we'll go to dinner and you sit at the bar and, next to you, they're like, oh yeah, we're here on vacation. But I think we're going to look at houses. And, the funniest thing is I posted a house for sale on Instagram. I had 15 people reach out, hey, do they want to rent? And I'm like, man, they don't want to rent. They really want to sell. And my sellers have been so closed off to renting for months and months and months, and finally like, hey, we'll take one renter, we'll just do one. If it works out, maybe we'll consider renting, but we still want to sell. So we get these renters in, and 2 weeks later they rent it for a month. 2 weeks later they call and like, hey, we want to buy down here. So it's just so crazy how everything's connected, whether it's going out to dinner, social media. I still get a lot of buyers and sellers off social media as well. So I'm not totally saying social media is out, but I do think there is a big thing about meeting somebody, shaking their hand, and making that relationship in person because they trust you.
Yeah. And you can never tell, because especially with the ultra high net worth, is a lot of them don't show their wealth the way they dress or the way they move through the world. And so you're right. You never know who's who and how exciting.
And everyone dresses so casual down here. It's so funny. You have no idea. We'll be at dinner and there's a football player sitting there at dinner, and I don't know sports, so I have no idea who that is. And everyone's like, "Oh, that's them." I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, and he's in shorts and
hi.
sandals.
They said hi back. It's funny. It's a small town, but it happens every day.
Well, here's what I want all of our listeners to do before our next episode. So I want you to, we're going to take some Kelsey advice here, and this is your homework. So pick your next listing appointment or buyer consult. Before you attend, you're going to open up ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whatever. You're going to type in Kelsey's exact prompt, which is, what concerns might a seller have about this property, or what objections would a buyer have in this neighborhood? Read the answer, pick the objections you're weakest on, and then prep your response. Don't do it next month. Do it this week at your very next appointment. It will only help you become a better agent. Kelsey, thank you so much for your time today. Where people can find Kelsey, and by the way, as I mentioned earlier, if you are working with clients who buy and sell homes in the Keys, but you're not in that area, you should connect with her. You can find her on Instagram, Kelsey Caputo, Kelsey Caputo Friends Realtor. I'm going to put a link to all of this in our show notes, so don't worry about spelling it. TikTok, Kelsey Caputo Realtor, and kelseycaputorealtor.com. Again, we'll have links to all of her social and her website on the in the description. And that is where Kelsey, anything else that agents should connect you? Or is there another is that the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, that, or call or text me anytime. I'm always available by phone, and I would love to connect with anyone coming to the Keys.
Love it. So reach out to her. Again, kelseycaputorealtor.com is where you can find everything. Follow her on Instagram too, and on TikTok. Check out what she's up to. And remember, she's a 30 under 30. So she is one of the top young agents in the country. She's not new to the business, but she is certainly somebody that has a lot of information. So follow her just to learn and do more with your business. Okay, Kelsey, thank you so much. We appreciate, on behalf of the audience, you spending time with us today. I know how busy you are, and this was a big deal for us. So thank you. And on behalf of Kelsey and myself, we want to say thank you to the audience. We appreciate you. You're the reason we do this show. 8 years now, 800 episodes strong. And we think we might be the biggest or the most listened to show for realtors in the country. If not, we're in the top 3. Thank you for helping us get there. Please tell a friend. Think of just one other agent that needs to hear. Anybody that's looking to break into luxury needs to hear this. And really, even if you're not in luxury, which most agents aren't, she gave some amazing tidbits of what to do with AI. Send this to a friend, send it to another agent in your office. We would appreciate you. Thanks to our sponsors as well. And we will see everybody on the next episode. Thanks, Kelsey.
Thank you so much. Have a great week.